Hey, welcome everybody to another edition of Coffee and Contracts. I am your host, Rusty Witten of CAR here in Memphis, Tennessee. And I'm excited about today's episode because as we're growing this show, I'm trying to diversify and branch out into other verticals and businesses that people may be interested in or looking to open. And one, we're starting to see a lot of growth in our med spas and aesthetics bars. And I'm excited today to have John Vakitas of Derm Pro with me here talking about that industry specifically. Excuse me, John, how are you today, man?
I'm doing great. Good to see you, Rusty.
Yeah, right on cue, my voice starts to go out. You know, it's been fine all day, and then I walk into the show and my voice beater's out. So I do apologize for that, man. Thank you for being here and taking the time to talk to me today, John. Excited to get to know you and your role there at Derm Pro and kind of your background. So why don't we start with that? Kind of give us a little background on who you are. You know, why should we listen to you about sales partnerships with Derm Pro and what they do?
I got a wild hair sticking out. I just noticed it there looking at myself in the camera. Sorry about that wild hair there. So my name's John Vakitas. I'm VP of Sales and Partnerships here at Derm Pro. I started in January of 2026, but my background is in driving revenue in practices, primarily through the patient acquisition side. I worked a couple of different agencies over 12 years, probably consulted north of 1,500 aesthetic practices on website best practices and social media and SEO and pay-per-click ads and all of that. But I kept running into a problem that I kept noticing within multiple practices. I'd say probably 80% or higher would drop the ball on the leads they were getting and then want to point the finger at the agencies. Very common discussion. You know, we could see we're delivering great leads, but speed to lead issues and things like that. So Derm Pro solves a lot of these challenges inside the practices through data and automation. And I thought I could get behind that because I've witnessed this problem, which is in the majority of the people I consulted. I thought that's a pretty big audience to work with. So that's why I moved over here.
Nice. And the transition's been smooth. I'm assuming you like being there at Derm Pro?
Love it. Yeah. The owners are very forward thinking and really trying to solve true problems that practices are dealing with through technology. You still have the human elements of running a practice. We don't get involved with that. We're not practice management consultants, but lack of data visibility and lack of automations and lack of systems is something that's very common in practices. You've got top performers who figured it out, but not everyone's a top performer, right? So we want to help more kind of grow. So.
Absolutely. So that's a great segue to kind of who Derm Pro is and what problems they are trying to solve, because I think this is kind of the key to the episode today is how you can help elevate the practices that you work with. So give us a brief introduction and synopsis of who Derm Pro is.
Yeah. So Derm Pro is an operating system that can layers on to the systems that practices are already using with their ad platforms and their practice management system and CRM, and we provide data visibility across those systems, which most practices don't have good data visibility. And then we have the capability to see what we would call leakage, which we'll probably expand on this conversation today, and then help solve that leakage through automation. So our background's in e-commerce. We still do e-commerce very well. We have our own e-commerce platform, and that's what most people know us in the industry for. We've been in business about 14 years and have served hundreds of practices with e-commerce. But about 3 years ago, we started seeing these other big problems that needed to be solved. And so we started doing integrations with multiple platforms and then setting up systems for retaining revenue in the practice. So retention's an area that, you've got patient acquisition, you've got retention, two ways to kind of grow revenue. And retention is an area that most practices don't do well. They may have some aspect of it, but they usually don't have it nailed.
Yeah, you're speaking to my clinician heart there, talking about patient retention and revenue leakage and all that, because that's half of what I would do in my previous role, especially once I got more up in leadership positions, was looking at the clinics and trying to understand, like I called it a leaky system, you call it revenue leakage, but where are the leaks, right? What are some of those common places that you see? Let's back up. Let's start with what do you define as revenue leakage and what does that look like for a practice?
Yeah, I mean, revenue leakage can be a couple things. So like if marketing sends a lead to a practice, what's that speed to lead on that, right? The golden standard is 5 minutes or less, or actually answering the phone live, which isn't always possible. But if somebody leaves a message or submits a form, what's your response time? There's a lot of data that shows how the opportunity to close that revenue drops significantly after 5 minutes, then after an hour, and that goes from there. Some practices take a day or two to follow up on a lead, or several hours to follow up on a lead. That's a big one right there. Number two is, all right, the front desk is getting some of those leads to show up for consults. Well, how many of those consults are converting into treatments, right? That's another area of opportunity for revenue leakage, because you can have really good front desk, but if people can't convert the consults that are coming in, maybe they need some sales training or whatever, that's an opportunity. And then the area that we focus more on is on the backside. You've got patients that have done a treatment with you, but maybe it's only one. Maybe you haven't cross-sold them, upsell them, or they're not on regimen. And that's leakage, because take something like Botox, maybe average treatment, $650. You do 2 of those a year, right? You got $1,300. You do 3 of those, you have close to $2,000. So just that one little extra treatment, right? You're preventing that leakage by keeping people on regimen can make a big difference. If you get them in 4 times a year, even better. If you cross-sell them from toxin to fillers, even better, right? So there's just more ways to grow revenue, and a lot of practices just leave 6 or 7 figures on the table every year.
Yeah, and I think that's common across all verticals, right? I think that's common across whatever medical practice we're looking at, but specifically like in aesthetics practice, when you have regimens that are available and things that require more than just one treatment, it's about how we're cross-selling, upselling, or convincing, I guess maybe is the right word, that these patients need these protocols and these regimens to get them to stay locked in.
Yeah.
Are there any other ways that you're seeing kind of some leakage that practitioners or business owners may not even realize?
Yeah, I mean, take something as simple as skincare. They come in the practice, they do a Botox treatment, and you recommend an SPF to help them in the summertime, right? Well, they buy that one time. What if you got them to buy a second or third time, and you had some automation there to follow up with that patient right when they're about to due to run out? So like all the different skincare products, for example, they have different regimen timings. Some are 30 days, 45, 60, 90 days. And so with automation, if you have visibility in the system set up to look and see inside the practice management system what they purchased, they know they bought this patient bought something like suntan screen lotion, SPF, and then this one has a retinol. They might have different regimen timings. So what if each one of those got a personalized message 5-7 days before they're about to run out with a link to a cart? They don't even have to go to the page to see the product. They've already bought the product. It just goes straight to the checkout cart, right? There's things like that you can do if you have data connected, right? If you don't have your data connected, you don't have your system set up, then you can't automate things like that. That's a great opportunity to keep patients on regimen and increase revenue and lifetime value.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a ton of sense. You know, my dentist's office that always reaches out when it knows that they know it's been so long since my last cleaning. I get texts from the pharmacy about medications. Like, getting automated helps so much in a lot of areas of life. I can't tell you the last time I sat down and actually wrote a check for a bill. They're all on auto withdrawal for my account, so we don't even have to think about it anymore. And when you can set your clients and your patients up on a similar system, then you become their provider of choice or their location of choice, because they know that you're going to help remind them and keep yourself top of mind. And I think, John, I think it's fair to say it's more than just like, hey, just checking in. It's been so long. But to your point, like, hey, here's the last time you ordered this product or had this treatment. Here's why you need the next step or why you might need more. Correct?
Right. Yeah. Like if in order to maintain the best results, you want to stay on a regimen. This product is recommended every 90 to 120 days. You're at 110. Probably time to come in. And then you can even do things like if you have other types of systems like injectable manufacturer loyalty rewards programs, and you can see their points. Now you can get really creative with your messaging and hyper personalized. It could be something like, not only are you due for your Botox appointment to stay on regimen, but you have 50 points in Alley that are getting ready to expire. Would you like to use those? Now you've got a different level of connection with that patient because of the connected systems, right? But if the systems aren't connected, you can't do those clever things.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a ton of sense. And it's all about making patient access easier, because if you're providing barriers or difficulty in ordering,
you nailed
patient's going to look elsewhere. But if you're giving them opportunities for success, they're going to keep coming back to you.
Yeah. Most practices don't have a retention campaign for like skincare, for example. But some that do send out an email or a text to say, hey, might be good to stay on regimen. They just send them a link to their main homepage. They're not thinking about the barriers that you just said. Now I have to go navigate on the site again and find it. And then I have to go add it. And then I have to go to the cart and check out. If you just send them a link directly to the cart to check out for a product you already know I want, there's 2 barriers you just removed for me. So
yeah. And I'm going to ask a question here, and feel free to answer as loosely or as 10,000 foot view if you'd like. But AI feels like a great opportunity to help with that and help integrate that across the platforms. Is DermPro using a lot of AI for that, or is it more like just true automation within y'all's product?
There is some AI, but AI, there's a lot of garbage inside practice management systems. So let me explain what I mean by that. A dermatologist that's doing medical treatments has ICD-10 codes. They're standardized. They're all the same across all the practices and all the practice management systems. But then when you get into the cosmetic side of things, you have free tech. So you might have Botox special in March, Botox in Black Friday, Botox for employees, and you've got all these different SKUs in there. And sometimes people abbreviate stuff. So SkinCeuticals might be SC and then the name of the product. So AI can't just naturally just figure all that out. It has to be, What we do is we map the data and then we assign, okay, that abbreviation is actually a skincare product and the regimen for that is 90 days, right? Yes. So there's a mapping process of data that we do at a level that AI is not going to just do natively on its own. AI is great for a lot of things. I use it every day. Yeah. But there are certain applications for AI that are good, and there's other things that are not ideal yet.
I think that's another just a great testimonial to why, I had somebody not long ago reach out to me from a real estate standpoint that was on a rabbit hole on ChatGPT trying to figure out how to do their own lease, realized they got in over their head. And so they asked ChatGPT, hey, who's the best tenant buyer rep that I could work with in Memphis? And somehow my name came up. So I'm forever grateful to AI for that.
Yeah.
But it's another testament to you could probably use AI to figure out some of this, but why, when you have a team of professionals that has the system automated, already working for you, like DermPro, to where it can take away a lot of that headache and hassle that you already have from running a business, you can trust the experts like DermPro.
Yeah, and AI is not going to natively integrate systems together and things like that. So that takes actual system integration work, and that you're not going to be doing that at an individual practice level. It's too costly, it's too timely, and we've already got all that set up. We're integrated with over a dozen systems. So
yeah, for sure. And again, that's just it takes some of the workload off because you have a team of experts, to your point, that have been through this and have kind of checked off some of these boxes. So you said in the green room before the show, revenue is kind of your background. That's kind of where you kind of came up before coming on to DermPro. So talk a little bit more about that. We're talking about revenue leakage, opportunities for increasing revenue. What about what are some other big picture revenue items that maybe some aesthetics practices aren't considering?
Well, when I say revenue leakage, I'm talking about missed calls, speed lead, inconsistent follow-up, forgotten recalls, no automatic skincare replenishment, poor lead attribution, disconnected system. It's a combination of things. So it's kind of a big word that means a lot of things. But when I'm talking about revenue leakage, that's what I'm talking about. Is you're leaving money on the table because of all of these different issues. And it's like I said, when you start compounding all the different areas of leakage within a practice, it's not uncommon when you calculate it out that we'll do an analysis, someone that hires us, right? And they want to do better cosmetic retention. They want to keep their Botox patients on regimen. We go to do an analysis for even really mature, large practices that have COOs and marketing leaders and all this. And we go look in their systems. They have, 35, 40%, 45% revenue leakage and retention. They're not keeping them on a regimen. So when you do that from across 1,000 patients or 2,000 patients, the math on that, it's stupid. $650 for one extra treatment a year times 1,000. Do the math. It's a ridiculous number. So, and practices, they focus so much on patient acquisition, the world I lived in for 12 years, that they often neglect that. And they just think spending more money on ads or whatever's going to fix the problem. And it doesn't. You still have a hole in your boat you need to fix.
Yeah, that's a great segue into what kind of marketing actually works, right? So everybody wants more patients. Everybody wants more clients on regimen and coming in through their doors. So where does that start? Where should these practices start that conversation?
The first thing they need to do is tie their marketing to revenue, because the agency, great agencies, they don't have access to the practice management system. They don't know revenue. So every agency pretty much reports on the same things: cost per lead, number of leads, things like that, versus they need to focus more on attribution of, all right, this ad generated this revenue. But it's hard. If you're a plastic surgeon, you did an ad in January, You did a consult in March and the patient came in and did the treatment in July, and you're doing that across hundreds of leads a month and you're trying to track all that manually, it's almost impossible. So what they should be focusing is on attribution, cost of acquisition of a customer, not cost per lead. If you're focused on things like cost per lead, not is the ad revenue generating the right type of revenue, you could be spending money on the wrong ads. This ad over here might generate more leads and have a lower cost per lead, but this ad campaign over here might actually be generating a ton more revenue. And so if you're not paying attention to the revenue sides of things, you'll waste a ton of money on marketing. So they need to focus on return on ad spend, lifetime value of their patients. So, when you get a patient in once for Botox, don't compare that necessarily to what you spent to acquire them. Your job is to retain that patient. So they come in $650 once, twice, 3 times, plus skincare upgrades, plus cross-selling them to fillers, cross-selling them to lasers. Right now, that patient might be worth $5,000 over time. And so, but if you don't understand these things and your systems aren't connected and you're not really measuring things like that, you don't have a closed loop reporting system. That's really what we bring to the table, is by connecting the data, allows them to have that closed loop revenue attribution.
Yeah. So you kind of hit around it a little bit, but what are some of those marketing metrics that they should know by heart? Like, what are some of those? You've talked about connecting revenue and leads generation. Like, what are some other metrics that these should be in your daily conversation?
Well, they need to understand number of leads. That's important. They need to understand number of leads that converted to a patient. And then they need to break that down: speed to lead, consult conversions, things like that. Then they might look at, all right, how many patients have we had that have had a Botox treatment but never had a filler cross-sell, right? There's all kinds of things like that you can measure when you're looking inside the practice management system. If you're not tied to the practice management system with your marketing data, you definitely have leakage. I can promise you that, just from all the conversations I've had in the last 6 months. So I haven't seen anyone be like, no, we got it all right, even though we're not connected. I'm like, no, it's always there's leakage.
It just seems like there's so many metrics that you do need to try and keep up with. I mean, there's some heavy hitters that kind of move the needle the most, but if you don't have those systems talking, like, there's going to be something that slips through the cracks. I mean, like, even in my day to day, if I don't look at my calendar or write down things I need to do or create that to-do list, something's going to get left off and forgot. Well, it's the same thing when you're trying to kind of like reconcile what you're spending cost per lead with what you're actually generating from these patients. You've got to have a system that looks at both. To your point, ties it together to make it streamlined and easy for you to be able to go and get a snapshot of where your business is at.
Yeah. And if I'm a marketing director and I can point out to the problem to the operations lead that, hey, we have leakage at the front desk, then they can go solve that problem. Or if I'm trying to increase my ad spend because I have confidence knowing that this campaign is working based on the revenue connection, well, the CFO is more likely to connect the dots. If he knows that he gives you 1,000, you turn it into 10,000, he's more likely to give you more money, right? But if he doesn't know that, and it's based on, high level metrics, cost per lead kind of stuff, but you're not actually connected to the revenue, it's gonna be harder to get those approvals. So really, you want to connect marketing, operations, and finance together, and the best way to do that is connect the systems. And then everybody's visibility to the same reporting. They're not looking at silos, which is typically what happens. They're looking at silos.
Because at the end of the day, everybody's looking at the same thing: profitability and cost per lead, right? Like, what is it costing us to generate the money that we need to keep the doors open and run the business? Correct.
I'm glad you said that word, profitability. That is increasing your lifetime value, like taking a patient that you've already paid to acquire, you've already met once, they've already built trust with, they've already had a treatment with. That is the best way to become profitable, is to get more revenue out of that patient. So like our top performing practices, like $50 million practices, have multiple locations. I'm talking like big numbers, right? These are people that pay attention to this kind of stuff. And they're typically doing 80% of their revenue from retention versus the 20% for acquisition, because over time, as you start getting good at this, you can actually lower your ad spend as you build your customer base and you keep that patient longer. You're not churning them. That's how you increase your profitability, because you're not just paying to acquire more patients to fill the churn in the background due to bad retention. You're increasing your retention, so you're increasing your revenue, which therefore increases your profits, because you've already paid to acquire them once. You don't pay to acquire them over and over again.
Yeah, it's the same thing with staffing, right? It always costs way more to bring on new staff than it does to keep the staff that you have and keep them growing.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing with a customer. If you can get them in the door and become their provider of choice for their Botox, for their, whatever that you're treating them for the skincare or whatever, like, upselling, cross-selling, and then just building that relationship, right? Like that's where front desk management, at least in my experience back when I was a clinician in my physical therapy days, like you have to have somebody at your front desk and the clinicians that are going to be able to convince hypothetical Mary to come back to you for the rest of her life for whatever she has going on or whatever needs she has in that aesthetic realm. And so if you can win them over with the people, and then you trust the data that shows here's how we're able to upsell, or here are the places that we're able to not squeeze a few more dollars, but invest in this patient to show them why what we're doing is important. That's going to be way more cost effective than going out in the community, posting ads online, billboards, flyers, whatever, because that patient's already in the door and it's going to be way easier to convince them to stick around and try other treatments.
Yeah. Like we recently met with a consulting group, like you and I are partners. I've got other partners too. And our job is to bring these solutions to our customers. If we can't solve the problem, I got somebody who can, right? You and I think the same way on that. And what they do is they focus on skin treatments versus selling products. I'm not going to just sell you Botox. I'm not going to sell you this skincare. I'm not just going to sell you a laser. I'm going to say, in order to get these results, this is a treatment plan. And that's a way that they get that patient in for more lifetime value, because they're getting the patient bought into the process. They understand it's going to be multiple months and multiple products over time to do that, therefore increasing the revenue for that practice. So it's just understanding the business a lot more than you do. Yeah. The younger practices, they have a lot to learn, right? But sometimes I meet really mature practices, been around 15 years. They still don't even have the CRM. It blows my mind. It's just like, how did you get by this way?
That's wild. Yeah. That's wild. And then that's where people in the marketing revenue side can then have the conversation with the operational team to start having that conversation with the staff, because that's where that's where that download of that information. Here's what the data's telling us. Operations team, here's how we're going to convert it into a conversation piece with our team. And then they can convert that into conversations with, again, hypothetical Mary or Jeff or whoever's coming through the door, to where that information is relayed in a way that makes sense to whatever level you're at, and in a way that can be easily understood to help relay that information to the patient to keep them in the door.
Yeah. I mean, like we did an analysis project. In my last organization, we did a lot of work with some laser companies. And so I was talking to our owners here and be like, hey, we should probably want to partner with some laser companies too. And so we did some research and looked at the data, and we found that like 53% of people who have had a laser treatment, we have, just so you have a little background, we have this massive database of all of our different clients, all de-identified, it's all HIPAA compliant and all of that. But we're able to slice data and run reports across multiple systems at the same time. We have close to $1 billion worth of revenue that we're monitoring and slicing the data for. So we said, all right, we're just curious. Out of the laser treatments, how many of those patients had a toxin treatment first? 53%. So if you could run a report that says, I want to see a report for all the people that have had toxins that haven't had a laser. Then you can put them in a laser education outreach program. You have a high chance to convert those just based on the data that we're seeing. They've already had a treatment first, typically a toxin, then they're more likely to be receptive to the lasers first. They do more business on the retention side with lasers than they do on the new patient acquisition side of the laser. But if you don't know that and you're not paying attention to data, you'll just keep spending money on ads to get those laser patients in, right? They're good revenue, but you have a gold mine in your database. You don't even realize it.
And walking in your clinic doors, right? Where you can invest a little bit more time or conversation with the patient that's already there. You've already won that patient over. They're already walking through your front door. They're already seeing you for one thing. And why not have that conversation to see what else? And there's a fine line, and I'm sure you can speak to this because I had this experience as well, but like there's a fine line in between educating and salesy, like providing quality education about what this product or treatment or line of service does to help improve their quality of life from an education standpoint. Because you'll find, at least in my experience, if you're educating first, then the patient has time to think about and process and come around to the idea without you having to then quickly turn into the sales mode of, here's why, this is what it costs, let's do this, doing the more sales approach.
Yeah, you could have a couple situations where maybe a lady has a little bit more hair further down on her face than she'd like, so they might laser it off. Or maybe a guy does laser hair removal on his chest, but he's got a scar there. And so like just while they're doing the treatment, they might say like, hey, what happened here? Oh, I had some open heart surgery. Well, I don't know if you know this. I know you're already getting a laser treatment right now, but we have another laser in the other room that actually helps reduce visible scars. that something you'd be interested in? They're already thinking about their appearance if they're doing they're shaving their not shaving their chest, but their chest hair. Well, they might not want to see that scar anymore, So there's some things like that you can do. Or my niece had a trach as a child. Well, they had a couple treatments to help reduce the scar on her neck, right? There's so many things out there, but education does that, and it doesn't come across as salesy if you're coming across as trying to be helpful,
right?
Then you're getting personal with them.
Yeah, and I know there are some like local aesthetics practices that I follow here on social media that do like laser tattoo removal. They do laser hair removal. They do laser skin tightening. And so, like you said, that's an easy conversation to have while you're already performing one laser treatment.
Yeah.
You don't have to try and upsell Botox or these other things. Like it's simple as I'm doing a laser treatment. Here's some other laser treatments we offer.
Yeah. Or you got a GLP-1 patient that they've been coming to you for 6 months and their face is starting to concave a little bit, or they've got some skin laxity and their skin's kind of hanging out a little bit from that loss of weight. Well, we have solutions for that. We have filler, we have body tightening. We can do those things to help you look and feel the way you want, because you've already worked so hard. You deserve it, right?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So what about those high performing clinics that you work with? You've mentioned that you've got some big players in the market. What are they doing differently when it comes to data, patient retention that you see other practices do?
High performing practices typically have a few things in common. They have systems, they're consistent, they leverage automation when it makes sense. You don't want to just AI everything. You need to have a human element in your practice so they understand what it's good for, what it's not. They focus on acquisition and retention, right? They're leveraging analytics to make better decisions. They're not going on gut feelings or I like this vendor. They're looking at the data, right? Your business is not a charity. If you have a vendor that's not bringing you money, you need to call it out, right? Invest in training the staff regularly, help the staff understand the business side of things, and have a solid, accountability with the team. It's one thing to be nice to your to your employees, but at some point you have to lead, and sometimes you have to call them out when they're missing the mark, right? And some people just want to be their friends and not be their boss. It's like, no, you got to run a business. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's where the data can help you with those conversations. Like, here's where you're at. Here's where our performance standards are. Here's some ways that I can help you meet that. Right. It doesn't have to necessarily be a termination kind of conversation. It can be a growth. And this, hypothetical employee may not understand or even know what they're leaving on the table.
It could be 3 patient coordinators that are all doing consults with patients to get them to become treatments, right? And a paying patient. So they're working those leads. Well, Mary gets 2 out of 10 closed, Sally gets 5 out of 10, and Teresa gets 7 out of 10. Well, if you're that first employee and you see that on the board, one, you don't want to be last. So there's some gamification there. So that's good to have a little dashboard to pay attention to in a weekly meeting or something like that. And then 2, maybe you have your top performer train your lowest performer. And maybe they have the desire to get there. They just don't know what it takes to get there. And that's where the data can show you these kind of things. Then you can make an intelligent decision because the data is telling you that, not that, I think she's pretty good. Well, based off of what?
Yeah.
Right. What
reality is
the data says otherwise. She sucks.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So comparatively, right. So she might be a nice person, but she might be terrible at sales.
And exactly. You kind of hit on it too. Like, it gives an opportunity when you're using data to kind of tell a story and not going off a gut feel on people. You give opportunity for other people to step up into a leadership role. And I know operations are always looking to grow and add leadership, especially in those. Yeah, exactly. Especially in those growth-minded type practices. They're always looking for the next crop of leaders. And in your example, if Teresa, who's the 7 out of 10 closer, can invest in Mary, who's the 2 out of 10 closer, and kind of bring her up, that gives Teresa some opportunity to kind of stretch her leadership and maybe see if a team lead is an opportunity or a role for her. Or it allows you to create some team lead type roles within your practice to where the better high performers who are interested can invest in those that may be a little behind or that are new to the practice.
Yeah, there's going to be a bell curve in every organization.
Absolutely.
Top performers, middle performers, and low performers. It happens everywhere. So
yeah. And so if you got those high performers, some of those may be interested in growing and being stretched a little bit to help those that are maybe on the middle to the lower end of the bell curve. And so knowing your data can help with that.
Yeah. Or maybe you only have one patient coordinator. You have nothing to compare it to. Well, maybe you go to a conference and you meet 3 other women that own med spas and you're talking to them. and you're just like, hey, what's your patient coordinator convert at? And they're like 7 out of 10, 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, 5 out of 10. And then you look at your numbers and you're the 2 out of 10 practice. They're like, ooh, how did y'all get there? Oh, we use so-and-so consultancy to help train our staff to get them there. Oh, great. Do you mind putting me in touch with them? I'd be happy to. Right. But if you don't know your numbers and you're not paying attention to your numbers, you would never ask that question at the conference. You'd never get that training, and that lady would still be killing you on your math. You get closing 2 out of 10, so.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. And so within your DermPro system and when you're doing this integration, is there a dashboard or like a KPI kind of tracker that people should be looking at, or that you wish they looked at more?
Yeah, we have different dashboards for different products. So some products are focused on e-commerce activation. Some of them are focused on cosmetic retention. Some of them are dermatology retention for medical. So we have different dashboards tied to what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I would say if you want to identify if your revenue is leaking, there's probably 10 things you really want to measure. I would say appointments booked, missed calls, lead conversion, patient retention, treatment mix, like how many people are buying multiple products, provider utilization, which providers are doing better selling than others, and staying busier than others with treatments, e-commerce sales, recurring revenue, from a marketing standpoint, your return on investment and your cost of acquisition, and then I would say your lifetime value. So those are 10 things that I think everybody, if they did that, and it's a lot. And if you don't have connected systems, it's going to be hard to measure all that stuff. Yeah. But if you do have your systems connected and you want that data to become available, it's pretty easy to get light on it.
I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit on that. So you got 10. If a practice came to you today and said, John, I like, that's a lot for my bandwidth right now. I need like 3 or 4. What are the 3 or 4 heavy hitters that move the needle the most for a practice?
Yeah, I actually wrote an article about this when I first started with DermPro. Like, every aesthetic practice should obsess over CAC and LTV. You got to understand your customer acquisition costs on different marketing types you're spending money on, different ad campaigns or different strategies. You got to understand that. Not cost per lead, customer acquisition. So if you got $48 a lead and you get 10 leads, well, it's not $48 a patient if you close 2 out of 10.
Right.
It's costing you, what, 260 or something like that, or whatever the math is. I don't have the math in front of me, but or if you close 1 out of 10, it's costing you $480 to acquire a customer.
Yeah.
And then if you're not keeping them and you're doing a $650 treatment and you're doing $480 to acquire them, you're probably upside down.
Yeah, quickly.
But if you don't pay attention to that, you can look busy and not be profitable.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then that lifetime value, there's so much revenue there that if you can get it to where 80% of your revenue is coming from lifetime revenue from your patients, that's where your profit starts to skyrocket, as I said earlier. But if you don't focus on it, you don't measure it, you can't fix what you don't measure, right? So I'm going through weight loss for myself right now. Started a couple weeks ago, lost about 8 pounds. I'll probably all water weight right now. I started measuring what I ate, started measuring how many times a week I work out, measuring if I had that margarita or that brownie, and I'm like, yep, that's why I didn't lose weight that day, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's such a great point. The data can help predict problems coming up, right? Like if you're seeing this trend, to your point, where you're spending $48 a lead, but you're closing 1 out of every 10, you know exactly what it costs you to get that patient in the door. In the end, let's say they come in for a round of treatment or 2, then you're really just you're setting a lot of money on fire. And I think that's why having these conversations, and this was one of my biggest frustrations when I was in a clinical lead position, was nobody wants to talk about numbers. They only want to talk about treating their patients and getting their patients better. Well, how do we do that? But that's through looking at numbers to show what our patients are coming in, how they're being treated, what we're doing for them during their session, that there's a fine balance there in having that conversation. But if you don't understand your specific numbers of your practice or you as a practitioner, you're never going to be able to figure out why I'm not excelling like Teresa in your example earlier, or why are my patients not sticking around, if you don't understand the story your data's telling you and the problems it's trying to present to you.
Yeah, you can be the best clinician in town in your specialty. You can have the best desire to want to help people, but you might not be in business in 3 years if you keep replacing your churn with your ad dollars, and you're not growing. Like it can be a problem, right? You see practices that buy 3 lasers and there's got $500,000 in capital equipment costs, and they don't have a marketing plan or budget for it because they put all their money in the lasers. I'm like, buy 1 laser, prove it to be successful as fast as you can, then go buy the second, the third later. But if you don't have the system set up, the laser is going to fail. It's not going to go sell itself because you have the best laser in town. Some people are shopping by brand name and things like that, but you got to have the systems of marketing behind it and continued marketing once they become a patient and things like that. I mean, just maybe somebody had hair removal treatments. They bought a package of 6. Well, hormones can change. Maybe you send out a reminder once or twice a year for a touch up. I mean, that might turn it into 7 or 8 treatments and another couple $100 a treatment. You do that across 1,000 patients, it can be significant, right? So
it could be the difference in that vacation or not, or that new employee or not, or whatever your goals are.
Second
for that
location,
practice.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. 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 For those growth minded, for sure. Well, speaking of that, so let's say a client comes to you and they're like, John, I want to start my first practice, but I don't know where to start from, like looking at like acquiring new patients. And then when I get them in the door, to your point, the lifetime value of those patients. What does that conversation look like, talking about that tipping point of what's it spent on the front end, and then when does it shift towards that 80-20 that you were talking about?
Yeah. So like back when I was consulting in digital marketing, we would define our customers by, new startups, or to new, maybe 1 to 2 years, to mature, to like, about to retire kind of thing, right? People that are about to retire don't need to spend a large percentage of their revenue towards marketing. They built up that lifetime value over 20 years or whatever. Yeah. If you're a new practice, you need to spend a lot on marketing because you need bodies in the door. I can have the best retention program available to you and you can buy it for me. That's great. Or you can buy an e-commerce platform for me. But if you don't have patients to sell to, we got a problem here, right? So, a couple of weeks ago, we were consulting a practice that came to us for e-commerce, and we said, "Well, what kind of revenue are you doing?" And they're like doing like 5,000 or less a month. It's not, or maybe it was annual. It was a really small numbers, and we were like, you know what? Let's talk about your other side of your revenue before we go down this path, and just ask some questions. And what we discovered through that discovery process is that e-commerce wasn't their best use of their funds. And so we kind of raised our hand and said, we'd like to turn that business down right now based on where you are in your business. However, we believe through what we heard about your cosmetic business, your injectables, you're leaving a ton of money on the table there. Why don't we get you more patients in the door first that you can then go sell more skincare to? And then when your skincare sales meet a certain threshold, then we can talk about now's the time to add e-commerce. Because like I said, if you don't have enough patients buying skincare products, e-commerce isn't going to solve that problem. You're going to sell more skincare in the practice than you will through e-commerce. E-commerce isn't grabbing new patients off the internet. It doesn't work that way. You're selling to your existing patients with your e-commerce. So, but if you don't have enough patients to sell to, then why are we even having that conversation about that system? So it's good to understand like what they're currently doing. They weren't using a CRM. We're like, that's a better use of your funds right now. And we can help with some of that. We can help you with the retention. We can give you a CRM. And they're like, okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense in getting those practices started. You kind of hinted at a second location earlier, right? So we kind of got it up and going, and we're running, and we're looking to add that second location. What does that look like converting back towards maybe some of that new patient acquisition, because you're serving a different part of your community, a different part of your town?
Yeah, I think every practice should have a CRM, a unified inbox for communication. So if somebody communicates with you off of Facebook, a form fill, or an inbound call, or a text, you can still communicate with that patient on that same platform that they inquired on through a CRM, like Go High Level, for example, is one that we use. And it's probably the most commonly used CRM in the industry. Nextech is a reseller of it. Simplast is a reseller of it. A lot of agencies are a reseller of it. But a CRM's like, it's a need. Like I can't imagine doing my job without a CRM. It'd be impossible.
Right, same.
Same for you, right, Rusty? So then e-commerce, drive additional revenue to existing patients to increase lifetime value once your revenue gets to the right point. Patient communications and appointment reminders are nice. Sometimes you can do that through a CRM. Sometimes you need a separate platform for that. Depends on your practice management system and some other things. Analytics across marketing, ops, and finance. Marketing automation, right? Help stay on top of those people, keeping them on regimen, things like that. Reporting on the front desk, consultation conversions, no shows. Your analytics and reporting can help with that. lead management also tied to the CRM, not just the unified inbox, but the management of those leads before they become patients. And then revenue by provider, right? Some are better at consults, some are better at upselling skincare, and you need some visibility and some data. And those are kind of the core systems I would say you want to grow into. You don't necessarily need to have all of it on day one as a startup, but if you're running 2, 3, 5 years now and you still don't have a CRM, it's time to start thinking about adding one, because while there is a cost to it, there's a larger opportunity cost in the amount of money you're leaving on the table. And I get it. If you're a practice owner, you've got all kinds of vendors and money just going out the door. I get it. But there's also opportunity costs of what you're losing because you're not spending money on the right systems and automation and trying to do everything manually on multiple spreadsheets and trying to understand the data and killing yourself to the wee hours of the night trying to do all this stuff when it could just be automated.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of people get in the med spa business because it's a lifestyle business. But if they're not systems operated, right, they're not are leaning towards systems and they just like the fun side of it and talking to patients and selling the solutions and doing the treatments and stuff, but they're not systems oriented, they're going to leave a ton of money on the table. So
for sure,
get good at the business side of this too.
Yeah. And I think that kind of leads to the last question before we head into our rapid fire section.
Yeah.
What does the right technology stack look like and do for a practice? Because you mentioned CRM and an integrated software that automates things and then has them communicating. But what does a good technology stack look like to you?
You definitely want to connect your ad systems and your website forms to your CRM. If you can connect your CRM and ads to your practice management system, those are like the core things that I would say. E-commerce is nice to have as long as you have the revenue behind it. But those are kind of the core systems I would say are kind of a must.
I like it. Well done. All right, rapid fire time. I got a few questions here, quick answers. Some of them are still business related, and then a few personals at the end just to get to know you a little better.
Sure.
We've talked about quite a few KPIs and things. What is the one KPI every owner should know?
I would say customer acquisition cost is the first one I want to understand early on, because if I'm spending a lot of money to acquire a customer, but I'm upside down on that, that's not good.
That's not good.
Exactly.
How can we fix those leakages?
And that's where I'd start, because then once you understand that, then you can start shifting the lifetime value. But if you don't even understand your CAC, then you're going to be having some problems.
What about the one metric they may obsess over a little too much?
I think it's healthy to be obsessive on like speed to lead, but the most practices are not. But there are some practices that obsess over things like that. Got to get them back to them within 5 minutes, or if it's on the weekends, you have an automation set up. I think that's a good one to obsess over. Actually, it's not a bad obsession. I think it's a good one. Because people are paying cash. They're not calling their medical insurance doctor and waiting 3 days to get back to them. This is a cash patient. I mean, back when I was at the agency, I remember having a conversation with a very difficult business owner, and she got a lead on I think it was a Saturday or Sunday. It was for a male, and it was for men's vitality. I'll leave it at that. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And she was complaining to me about her ROI. And so it was Tuesday at 3:00. I'm like, well, what about this lead? The last lead you got here. What about that one? Because that was worth like a $3,000 treatment. And so she goes, I'll get back to him, or if he's interested, he'll call me back. I'm like, honey, he's already gone. It's 2 days. He's already embarrassed enough that he's got the issue and he's contacting you. Something was trustworthy on your website enough to make him contact you. Now you're going to make him wait? Man, you're going to lose that guy. I promise you, he's already talking to somebody else 2 days later. Yeah, and, but she didn't get it. She didn't understand the speed to lead concept, and she was just leaving money on the table, wanted to point the fingers at the agency. I'm like, you got to take some accountability on this stuff, lady.
Yeah, exactly.
So we ended up parting ways, but I'm sure she's probably out of business now, would be my guess. She's terrible business owner. I've seen a lot of
sure. And that's not every great clinician is a good business owner. Not every good business owner is a great clinician. You got to find that balance for sure.
Yeah.
But what about like biggest mistake new aesthetics practices make?
New, I'd say overspending in the build of the practice, not necessarily the build of the real estate. I think you need to have a nice storefront, have people have a great experience when they come in. You can overdo it, I'm sure, but buying like too much equipment early on and not having money for other systems and marketing. That's the big one. They buy, too many different lasers or whatever. I'm not picking on the laser industry guys. I've got a lot of friends in the business, but I've seen people overextend themselves. I've seen people buy 2 lasers $400,000 in equipment and didn't even have a retail spot yet. They were thinking of going into aesthetics and they got sold the story. Just sitting in their storage unit for 6 months while they got capital equipment payments of $7,000, $10,000 a month. I'm just like,
that's wild. Yeah.
When you got that much money to blow, go for it. But
I mean, yeah.
I operate, but
yeah. You're better off than I am. That's for sure.
Yeah. And it blew my mind. And the worst thing about it was the laser rep who sold it to his dad. Been trying to get him into aesthetics for 5 years. He was an anesthesiologist or something, and he got all this equipment and didn't understand the industry that well, and got sold the big dream after 5 years of being pitched, and finally bought the lasers. Great for his son making the commission, but terrible for him from an investment standpoint. And he was calling us panicking later, and I'm just like, dude.
Yeah.
Bad
Should have had this conversation first. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
How about marketing or operations? Which one has the bigger impact?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one, Rusty. You got to get leads in the door or else you have nothing to operate with. So I'd say marketing is important early on, but over time, I say operations becomes a little bit more of that shift to that lifetime value. Because if you can get 80% of your revenue from the patients you already have, you don't need to invest in much in marketing. So I think there's a tipping point at some point where it shifts from marketing to operations.
Yeah, for
sure. You can get people in the door all day long, but if you have terrible experience on the phones and operating, then all that marketing is going to go right out the window.
Yeah, exactly. So. All right. What's your coffee order? Are you a coffee guy first? And if so, what's your coffee order?
Mine is I typically drink like a Sumatra or something like that from Starbucks. I have it at home. Drink coffee here and add a little cream.
Oh boy, yeah.
I can't drink it. Just I have done it in the past, just straight up black, and I used to have sugar and cream back in the day, but years ago when I was on another weight loss journey, I removed the sugar and just got used to it. So now I can drink it without sugar.
Yeah, there you go.
Good old coffee.
Nothing wrong with that, man. Are you a reader? Do you read books?
Yeah, I do more audio. It's just the way my brain processes. I wear glasses and all that. I learn better audio.
Sure. What's a business book that has impacted your outlook?
Oh man, let me pull one up that I recently listened to that was good. From a personal standpoint, I listened to Atomic Habits recently, and that's what got me back on this health journey. Let me see here. Oh, what's
Atomic Habits is really good.
Yeah, it's excellent. Let me find my audiobooks. Hold on just a second. I'm trying to remember the name of it.
Oh. Yeah, Atomic Habits helped me with a lot of things, from daily conversations to just like daily agenda items. Like it was that one was super impactful for me.
Yeah. A couple books I recently listened to was The Hard Thing About Hard Things and 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel.
Ooh, I've not read those yet, so I have to put those on my list.
Yeah, I saw somebody. I saw somebody I had a meeting with this morning, one of our partners, and on her banner on her LinkedIn profile, she had like a little picture of her head, but the banner behind her had books, 5 books, and 2 of them were those.
Oh, cool. Yeah, very cool. I like that. Last couple, favorite summer activity, since we're in the doldrums of the heat of summer. What's your favorite summer activity?
So in Texas, it gets pretty hot. I like to be in the water. My wife and I are both water babies, and we're very fortunate that her family has a home down in Rockport, Texas, which is down by Corpus Christi. So it's on the Texas Gulf, and it's a little hidden gem. A lot of people don't think about this, but it looks like Florida. There's homes on canals and palm trees and boats running around and jet skis. Cool. And it feels like Florida, but you're in Texas. So yeah, that's my favorite place to get away. And, I can do this job from anywhere. So sometimes I work while I'm there and sometimes I don't work while I'm there. But we probably go there 4 or 5, 6 times during the summertime just to kind of get away. Then we have a pool in the backyard as well. That house that has a pool on the canal inspired us to put a pool in our backyard. And we were out there playing yesterday. But being in the water, if it's hot, that's my go-to.
Love it. Love it. And you kind of answered my last question of where's your favorite summertime retreat? And it sounds like it's down at Rockport, right?
Rockport. We like Florida quite a bit too, but we've been a few years, but we're talking about maybe going in October. So
awesome. Well, John, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate the time investment today. Just getting to know you and the aesthetics bar, med spa industry, and how DermPro can help those clients. Tell the folks where they can find you. I'm going to link your email in the show description along with your LinkedIn profile, but how can people get a hold of you if they'd like to talk more?
Yeah, if you want to talk more, I am on LinkedIn. If I see you're in the aesthetic industry, whether you're a partner or a practice owner or an operator or a marketer, I will accept your invite. But I also have an Instagram channel called Aesthetic Revenue Growth you can follow, just all ran together, no dashes, no spaces, Aesthetic Revenue Growth. I try to post 3 times a week there. And I'm usually on LinkedIn. I'm posting an article every Monday. Right now, I'm in a series on e-commerce for about the whole Q3. I'm writing on e-commerce.
Nice.
A couple of months back, I did a 10-part series on CRMs and why you should consider it and how it can benefit in your practice. So I like to write in series, and then sometimes I'll write individual things about psychology and aesthetics and things like that too. But I've probably got 250 articles on my LinkedIn profile between my days in the agency and today at DermPro. So there's a lot of good content.
Fantastic. Well, make sure you reach out to John if you have any questions in the med spa world, anything from marketing, CRM, anything. He's a great resource. Hit up his email in the show description here, or find him on LinkedIn, as he said. Give him a follow on all socials, and me as well. I'm 901 Realtor_Rusty on Instagram and TikTok. Coffee and Contracts. If you're here this far, go ahead and subscribe. Turn those notifications on. We drop an episode about every Wednesday, at least every other Wednesday, as we're growing and getting to know more folks in the industry. So again, John, thank you for your time today. Appreciate it, buddy. Appreciate you hanging out. In the meantime, make sure you drink your coffee, protect your profits, and we'll see you back here on Coffee and Contracts next time.